purpose of the day really just to have a catch up and tell me all about you and your background and how Think Posture started.
Yeah, okay. Well, 25 years in workplace ergonomics, mainly workplace ergonomic solutions.
Okay.
So I graduated back in 2000 with a degree in human movement science, not really knowing what I wanted to do, like many graduates. And I found a company who were looking for sports science graduates to go and work within workplace ergonomics. So I went and had an interview, liked what they were talking about, and actually it linked back to what I'd learned at university. And sort of 25 years later, I'm still at the coalface doing it. So after sort of 20 years of working with arguably the market leader, I in a way became a little bit disillusioned with how the industry had shifted and moved, in the sense that organizations all of a sudden were trying to sell their own brand products for maybe financial gain rather than keeping the individual's wellness at heart, which was always what the industry sort of claimed to be.
Okay.
So myself and a couple of ex-colleagues set up Think Posture and a sister company in the Posture store to try and bring the industry back to sort of what we felt it should be, and be all about the individual and the individual's well-being within work. So Think Posture is very much a business-to-business organization whereby we support companies to look after their staff, initiate well-being programs, and find solutions where there are difficulties for staff to be comfortable or productive in the workplace. And the Posture Store is more aimed at the business to consumer market, whereby we're trying to get individuals to think about their posture outside of the 9 to 5. A lot of individuals will take care of themselves within work because the employer's doing the paying and looking after them. But then they really need to think about what they're doing outside of those hours of work. So what they do at home. Are they just going home and playing on their PlayStation, or looking at their tablet all night, on their phone all night, watching TV, and equally how they sleep as well. So trying to cover off all aspects of life through those two brands.
Okay, really interesting. So how do you typically support an organization? What's the process that you do? Do you kind of you go in and do an assessment, I guess, of some description?
Yeah, I mean, a sad indictment of the industry that we work in is that it's very reactive.
Okay.
So unfortunately, the primary source of business is somebody already in pain or having difficulties, and us trying to go and assess how they're working, the environment they're working in, the equipment they're using, and how we might be able to support them and improve that. First and foremost, try and improve it through change.
Right.
But equally, if there's a need for product intervention and change within the products they're using, then make the recommendations around that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is a reactive market. However, once we are working with an organisation, we then try and look at how we can be a bit more proactive with them, with putting together well-being and wellness programs to support the staff more generally, rather than just the individual that might be suffering.
And I guess, I mean, the workplace has changed phenomenally over the last couple of years. So why do you think ergonomics is such an important part of the modern workplace now?
Well, it has undoubtedly changed over the last couple of years post-COVID. However, flexible working or hybrid working, whatever we want to call it, back in the day, hot desking, has probably existed for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But certainly post-COVID, clients looked at their estate and realized that actually we don't need all of this space. We can condense the amount of space that we're using, save ourselves some money, because people will be working from home some of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's here to stay.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of chat in the news about people calling people back into the office full time, but actually the employee probably doesn't want that. And in order for companies to retain their talent, they need to be a bit more and remain flexible in that way. But from an ergonomics point of view, it's thrown up challenges. By repurposing their space and condensing it, reducing the number of desks, changing the style of furniture being used, what we've seen is a move away from what we know as a standard workstation setup of maybe 2 screens, keyboard, mouse, to just blank tables with a few chairs around it. And people are expected to then arrive in the office, find a space to work, and often, or far too often, they're just throwing their laptop down on the work surface and working from that.
I think people move between different locations within the office a lot more frequently now as well. So it's really difficult to try and offer that same standard of ergonomic workplace in multiple different locations.
Yeah, and that, I mean, the laptop lends itself to movement. However, from an ergonomics perspective, it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
We obviously see an awful lot of people sat with it even on their lap. I mean, the clue was in the name, but it doesn't sort of promote good posture, and even on a work surface, it doesn't either. But with that movement, people need to be educated and posturally conscious, as we would say, about how to work safely, but also what damage can be done when they're not working safely. As I say to my daughter all the time, you're only ever going to have one spine. People can have joint replacements in their knees and their hips, but the spine is something that's you're only ever going to have one of, so you need to take care of it from day one.
Yeah. So with all of this change, what kind of excites you the most about the future of hybrid working and ergonomics then? You see it as a big opportunity?
The opportunity will always exist, and the opportunity will probably always exist because I see that design of workspace shifting back and forth, dependent on, well, probably the direction of the wind, to be quite honest with you at the minute. Because people will find different ways of working. But quite often the design teams who put the sort of the principles in place aren't considering the ergonomics, or should I say, aren't considering actually the individual who is working in that workplace. And because we're all about the individual, and looking at them as the only part of the workplace that feels pain, is how can we support them in it. So all of the changes that will happen over time will throw up different opportunities for organisations like us to support people through that. The hot desking element for me is sort of really interesting. We do quite a few assessments for a government organisation, and post-COVID they shifted to, rather than having local offices, to satellite offices, fewer satellite offices, but large offices. And they fitted them out really nicely. There's a selection of height adjustable desking. Some of it's fixed. Okay, maybe I would have said either go all in or all out with that decision. The quality of the chair's okay. There's a couple of screens. But the amount of people we go and see who still plonk their laptop in front of those 2 screens and work directly from their laptop. And the reasons we get given for that are sort of varied. Some of it can be hygiene. I don't want to use that keyboard because somebody else has used it. I don't want to use that mouse because somebody else has used it. Or it's just easier this way. And I think the opportunity to work with those sorts of organisations and look at how their staff have interpreted how they want to work is really interesting. But also working with those organisations to try and educate the staff a little bit better on the importance of working ergonomically will sort of create a pathway for companies like Think Posture to exist forevermore.
I think the education is a really strong part of that. I see it so many times when we go to client offices that they've installed height adjustable desks and various other things, but nobody's been taught how to use them at all. So they come in and they, like you've just said, they sit down with their laptop and they kind of ignore the environment that's being provided around for them. Also, from our perspective, we've changed or evolved our products greatly because of exactly what you said, that people don't want to share a keyboard, don't want to share a mouse. So we've had to kind of allow for that type of thing where people can take their own personal things with them wherever they need to go. So yeah, I think it provides lots of great opportunities. It's just kind of sometimes, I guess, a little bit frustrating making sure it gets to the coalface of the people that actually are using the space, so that they understand how to use it to the full benefit of for their health and everything else.
Yeah, education is key to the success of any change that takes place, particularly when it comes to ergonomics, health, well-being of the individual. If somebody's already in pain, genuinely in pain, they'll do anything to get out of pain, and therefore they'll research it, they'll look after themselves, they'll do whatever they can.
Right.
However, we've got a lot of people entering into the workplace, maybe in their sort of early mid-20s, who realistically think they're bomb-proof.
Yeah.
But they're the same makeup as every other human being.
Yeah.
And as we sort of know, sitting for prolonged periods, being very static and sedentary, creates pain, creates problems. So the education needs to be sort of there. But that for me is the responsibility of the employer.
Yeah.
And if they are making changes to the ways of working and the design of workspace, whatever that might be, and however they see the future of work being, they need to back that up with education and then ensure it's implemented by the employees. Too many people in a hot desking or shared workspace environment will just arrive at their workstation and sit down, as you say, probably with their laptop in front of them, even if it's with two screens and there's no laptop. But none of them adjust their chair.
But simple things like making sure you've got the right connector to connect to those screens. Very often that isn't provided. Some of the most successful projects that we've done with clients is where they've really thought about this before, and they actually use the Hotbox as part of that onboarding process. They produce a manual, so when they first come in, they're told how to work in a new way, because you can't just assume people will know what to do. So yeah, it's about providing the right tools, I think, from the beginning, and explaining how to use them, and making it really easy. Because if you make it tricky, people will just, I'll sit down and use my laptop, rather than kind of, take the effort to do it properly. So if you can make it easy for people, you're probably going to get a much higher uptake of it as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely.
What do you think are the biggest challenges faced out there at the moment then in the hybrid and agile working world?
I would say the inconsistency of the approach to it. There's no set guidelines to how an organisation should implement it, what sort of way they should follow it.
I thought there was like government guidelines or rules, or there always used to be. I mean,
the DSE regulations still
Yes.
still exist, but I mean, let's be brutally honest about that. They were written in 1992.
Yes.
33 years ago.
Oh wow, never been updated.
They were amended in 2002.
Okay.
Still 23 years ago.
Right.
And the workplace has sort of evolved and changed, not only from a technological perspective, but design, the ways of working, the way we all work. And in a way, I think people need an element of guidance or parameters to work within, particularly when it comes to something that can be as varied as sort of hybrid working.
And how, because I used to sell office furniture many years ago, and it was kind of like a standard guide, but I guess it may be the same thing, that kind of showed you a monitor on a desk, and your eyes are supposed to be at a certain level and height and all of this sort of thing. Is that still the same.
It's still
thing.
the set guidelines. So it'll show you a pretty picture of a stick man sat with right angles throughout his body.
Yes.
A screen at eye level. A screen at arm's length.
Yeah.
And they're all good guidelines, and they're all good things that people with maybe no experience can copy, and it gives them a good grounding and a good starting point. However, it's not how the human body functions. It's not how it works.
But if you think about the modern office now, the amount of work that people actually do at a desk or workstation is probably a third or a half of the time that they're in the office. They could be working in a breakout area, as a sort of table, in a collaboration area. So it hasn't really kept up then, I guess. So that must be a real challenge when you go in to kind of try and do an assessment and somebody presents you with a sofa. How do you make that ergonomically viable?
Well, with difficulty, with great difficulty. I mean, the key messages always remain the same of movement.
Right.
Make sure that if you aren't sat in a DSE compliant environment, that you're not doing it for prolonged periods of time.
Right.
I always say a little bit of bad is not a terrible thing. And if you think about using a laptop directly on a work surface, if you're just touching down and checking emails for 5 or 10 minutes, okay, it's fine.
Right.
But if you're going to do it for 5 hours, the posture that you're going to be adopting is going to cause you some issues further down the line.
Right.
And these are the exact challenges. There's no consistency anymore to how organisations are asking their employees to work. They're giving them a little bit more carte blanche of, look, here's the space, use it how you want.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as a result, those guidelines that we've been presented with previously have sort of gone out the window, and people are sort of stumbling around in the dark trying to work out what to do and how to do it.
Do you think many organisations are actually aware of the DSE guidelines?
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's still the health and safety tick box that they've got to do for anybody who's using computers for any sort of prolonged period of time or reasonable amount of their working day, so that they're still going through that process. But that assessment will probably take place at a desk, at a workstation.
Yes.
The DSE sort of stereotypical setup. And then not necessarily consider, well, actually, they can go and work in the breakout area or in the canteen or from a sofa.
Yeah.
So they're ticking the box as far as the DSE guidelines go. But there's, as you say, the flexibility to work from different areas throws up different challenges.
Yeah. And
they're the bits that aren't being sort of assessed or reviewed in that way.
are you seeing, you spoke earlier about a lot of the time an organisation will only contact you when somebody is in pain. Are you seeing the type of pain or injury changing with this kind of different work environments?
I think it's possibly too early to say. We're seeing the demographic of the people we're seeing probably getting younger and younger.
Right.
But that isn't necessarily down to the way that the office is set up or they're being asked to work. It's probably the amount of time or access they've had to technology through their younger years.
Right.
And working or having a mobile phone from early teenage years or maybe even younger, tablets when they were younger and things like that, and just generally posture related issues associated with that. I think we will see or be able to get some more sort of firm statistics around the impact of hybrid working and this working from different zones within offices further down the line. But as it stands, it's still back pain, neck ache, wrists.
Because I think I read somewhere about the increase, certainly in neck ache, which and a kind of like a bulge on the back of the neck, even for people.
Kyphotic postures, and that comes from where that device or the screen that they're using comes from, and the sort of the posture that people are adopting to use it. And as I say, that could be as a child, but equally if the go-to piece of technology in the workplace is now a laptop, then it's going to encourage those screens. So it's important, certainly with laptops, to get that screen closer to eye level, or as close to eye level as you possibly can, with separate keyboard, separate mouse, so that we're at least mimicking the sort of the old style of setup with screen, keyboard, mouse.
I guess that's the thing as well, that a good point to raise is the number of people that will use a laptop using the keyboard on the laptop, which I guess is fine to some degree, although it's rather flat. But they're using the trackpad or something on there rather than a mouse. So it's that can't be good for you in such a tight space.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what style of mouse you're going to use, realistically, a compact keyboard with a mouse is far better for you than a standard larger keyboard with a mouse, because the size of the keyboard pushes the mouse outside of what we would determine your neutral zones of reach. As a result, can create shoulder issues and things like that. But being in sort of that confined, cramped space certainly puts different pressures on different parts of the body. And we tend to, because the mouse sits in front of the keyboard, tend to sort of start pulling everything that little bit closer, which obviously then brings the screen closer.
Yes.
So then we're getting even more
Hunched.
sort of hunched in the way we're working. So that's why we advocate separate keyboard, separate mouse, because even if you're going to work with your laptop screen as your primary source of primary visual source,
Yeah.
is to get it that little bit further away from you, and therefore promote that more upright posture, and keep you sort of open-chested, which again all helps with sort of the amount of air you're getting into your lungs, your productivity levels, just general health side of things, and it's all interlinked. And that's the sort of the interesting thing of what we do, is that we can have a positive impact on people's general health by looking at how they work.
Okay.
And the same in the reverse is looking at how things can be affected.
Sure. And do you think the task chair is still plays a really key role now because you could be sat on so many different seats during the day, couldn't you? Or styles of seats even.
I think it should. It is the one piece of equipment within the workplace that we as human beings associate with comfort.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, I'm a self-confessed chair geek.
Right.
So chairs is probably my area of expertise within all of the ergonomic products and solutions. But it's very difficult to adapt the workspace as a whole if we're asking people to sit on beanbags or stools or things like that for prolonged periods, because nobody's strong enough in their core to support their own seated posture for prolonged periods. So we need something that's, generally speaking, a task chair in its form, has a backrest, has a seat pad. Then how ergonomic it is depends on the level of adjustment. And
well, therein is half the problem, because people don't know how to adjust a chair, or unless you spend a lot of money, that's a self-adjusting type of chair. But most chairs, I guess, a bit like a height adjustable desk, people just sit on it and they don't make any adjustment.
yeah, and that comes back to education.
Right.
It's trying to inform people of the importance of posture, of working safely, a good working practice, and teaching them how to then adjust the equipment that they've been provided with. Certainly come back to hot desking. You can go and find a desk with a chair at it. How many people make their first task of the day to adjust that chair rather than just sit on it and crack on with work? And as we always say at Think Posture, the only thing to feel pain within the workstation environment is the human being. So let's look after the human being and adjust everything around them.
Mm-hmm.
But human beings don't necessarily make it that we're the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
They just get on with the work. Same with height adjustable desks. How many times do I walk into a corporate environment where there's banks and rows of height adjustable desks and everybody sat down?
Mm.
People use sit-stand desks, as they're also known,
Mm-hmm.
more as sit desks. They might get their sitting height right,
Yeah.
and the height for their seated posture right, but they very rarely stand at them. But again, that's education.
Mm.
It's a lack of understanding of how often we should stand,
Right.
when we should stand, why we should be standing.
Do you think, I mean, there are apps and there are watches and all things out there that would tell you to stand and do all of these things? Do you think people pay attention to that, or?
People love tech. I mean, Apple Watches, smartwatches, they're all over the place now, and they'll all provide that level of feedback to you.
Mm-hmm.
But my honest belief is that human beings are really poor with time.
Right.
And setting an alarm on your phone or on your watch is all very well as a reminder. However, if we're in the middle of something, if we're concentrating on a certain task, it's all too easy to dismiss that alarm or snooze the watch, so that we carry on focusing on what we're there to do, which in the work environment is work. And once that alarm's been missed or that reminder's been missed, it's gone. You can't get it back.
So do you think it would be better to be kind of task focused? So okay,
yeah.
I'm going to type this document, I'll sit. When I'm going to review it, I'll stand or something. Do you think that would make it easier for people?
Exactly that, and that's what I talk to people about in assessments all the time. Is think about the tasks that you do in any given day, and they can be wide and varied. Which ones do you think lend themselves to being stood up, or even moving away from the workstation and going and working in the breakout zone?
Yes, that's a good idea, actually, to make better use of the space in that way rather than...
Because that creates movement in its own right.
Sure.
The idea behind a sit-stand desk is to take us away from this seated posture, which is not how the human body was designed, back into a standing posture. But actually, given the hybrid working, flexible designs that we're seeing in the offices now, is actually go and work in a different part of the office.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, still keeping at the core, whatever you're doing is still to work safely. And if that is coming back to laptop use, taking your laptop into the canteen and popping it on the table, it's okay for 10 minutes. But for a prolonged period, you need some sort of solution.
But the challenge is being able to take the work tools that you need with you wherever you need to go. And again, I think this came back to one of the points we were talking about earlier. If you don't make it easy for people, they just won't move. And we go into so many workplaces, and the designers have put so much thought into this space to make these 3-4 different zones that people can move around to. But if you don't make it easy or provide the tools for them to do it, they just don't move because there's too much hassle to pick their things up and move to where they want to go. And it's kind of a waste of the space that's been developed, really.
Yeah, or people just stay where they are. And again, that's against what we stand for in promoting this movement and promoting variation and things like that.
Yeah.
But as you've designed, a Hotbox will allow you to pop those items into a caddy and reset up in whatever location it is.
Sure.
And it's in a way it's also getting the human being element of this to buy into that, and buy into that. It only takes 30 seconds to set myself up wherever I'm going to be, and to reinforce that actually that 30 seconds is the most important part of the day.
Yes.
In setting yourself up wherever you might be to work safely, posturally, and look after yourself moving forwards.
Yeah.
That in itself is a challenge, because human beings, I don't want to be controversial, we can be quite lazy. We'll always sort of look for the path of least resistance, and we'll do what's perceived as easiest for ourselves. But again, it comes back to education, doesn't it? It always feeds back to how well do we understand what damage we might be doing? How well do we understand how we can help ourselves? And unfortunately, that sits on probably, yes, there's self-preservation within that, but the employer needs to be the one that's sort of shouting about that the loudest, certainly in the work environment. Because otherwise people go to work, start at 9, I'm done at 5, I've done my 8 hours, I'm off.
Interesting. So beyond the physical, what other impacts do you think there are then? I guess we're talking about well-being, productivity. There's a host of other things, other than the physical. What other sort of challenges do you see?
I think the other challenges probably tend to apply more to the home working side or the remote working side of hybrid working. People aren't necessarily working as a team as regularly anymore. They're isolated, whether that be they're working from home or they work from a coffee shop down the road. That there's not that sort of team ethic and the amount of communication that there ever used to be when we were all in the office all at the same time.
It's culture, isn't it? It's difficult to build that work culture.
And I mean, I've worked from home all of my working career, so for 25 years. And 25 years ago, when I told people, I'm going to be working from home, I got that sideways look of, oh yeah, right, you're going to be working from home, are you? Cricket on the TV or whatever it might be. But I think actually, if anything, what COVID did teach people was, if anything, you work harder and you work longer when you work from home. Maybe because it's there and it's always accessible, whereas when you leave the office, you're gone. You can't, unless you're going to pop back into the office, which might be half an hour down the road to finish an email, you're not going to do it until the morning.
No.
But when you work from home, it's always there and accessible. But equally, we get to a point where there's that sort of risk of people burning out and the stress of getting it done. And because they're not visible in an office, they think they've got to do a little bit more so that their line manager or the boss has seen that they've done what was perceived as their 8 hours today. And so the mental health side, the stress, the burnout, and just the isolation are probably the biggest challenges. But that really sort of lends itself probably to the home workers more than just hybrid working as a whole. Although even in offices, the reliance on technology now, you before pre-Teams, I mean even pre-email, you'd have to walk across the office to go and have a conversation with a colleague. It's too easy to drop them an email now. Oh, have you done this? Or can you do this? Or even now, you might still get the visual contact with a Teams meeting, but people are on one side of the office to another having a Teams conversation, which is criminal, particularly when you say about these design teams putting all the effort in to create zones of collaboration zones, communication zones, that sort of water cooler moment of, oh, can I just grab you and we'll go and grab a coffee and what have you. But people are still staying where they are and not using the space in the way it was intended.
No, it's tricky. And do you think organisations understand the risks of the ergonomic issues in the workplace, or do they think I'm ticking a box, that's fine? Or
I think that's dependent on the organisation and the individuals who are working either within health and safety, facilities, well-being, HR, those type of contacts who make those decisions or create or write policies around hybrid working.
Right.
I think they're all aware that there are risks.
Right.
I think some are better than others at either sort of limiting those risks or reacting to scenarios where there are issues. But that's what Think Posture's job is to sort of shout about it, and then go and solve these issues. I'd love Think Posture and all of its competitors to be proactive, to be able to sort of reduce the amount of reactive work that we do by being involved in setting policy and working practices and implementing products that hopefully make people posturally more aware, posturally better off, more productive, so that there's ultimately a return on investment on these products. But we're not there yet. Scandinavia have set probably a standard within ergonomics and well-being, which is sort of way ahead of where the UK is. We're moving very slowly in the right directions, but I don't think we're ever going to get the legislation or the guidance from the government by changing those DSE regulations to a level which will appease the Think Postures of this world.
I think you've got to make it more relatable to the current environment as well a lot of the time, because I guess if I looked at the DSC guidelines from 23 years ago, it's like, how is that applicable to the environment that we're working in? So if you were going to make your own practical guide or step by step, these are the 5 top tips to do, what would you recommend to a business to at least kind of get the 5 basics right?
If I had my 10 minutes with somebody who was writing DSE policy, what we've got to consider is those that still work on standard DSE setups.
Yeah.
Because it's not a hybrid environment. It's their desk, or it might be a hot desk, but it's their desk. It's got a screen or a couple of screens. It's got keyboard, mouse, chair. Sure. I would love for there to be some guidance about the height of that work surface. Right. And that's not to say it needs to be height adjustable, but it needs to be height suitable for the individuals who sat at it. Okay. The chair should have more adjustment than it currently needs to have. My bugbear with the current DSE regs, they missed out one word when it came to chairs, and that was the word independent. Okay. So a chair has to be height adjustable and have back height adjustment. It has to have a back angle adjustment or tilt adjustment. What they didn't include was the word independent. So that backrest height doesn't technically have to be independent of the seat height at this stage. Right. Well, every chair's got a natural level of contour to it. Yeah. Well, if it's not independently height adjustable, if that backrest doesn't fit your back, it's never going to fit your back because you can't adjust it. Yeah. So they're the sort of the things that you change it, and then equally, it's so easy now and cost effective to put every monitor on a monitor arm. That means all of a sudden you can easily change the height of the monitor, the distance of the monitor. Sure. Keyboards and mice, they're generally going to be pretty standard. Right. I'd probably go compact because very few people use the number pads now, unless you're job specific of working in finance or numbers. Yeah. You probably don't need it. But then you've got the other side of the hybrid workers. And in a way, you probably need a separate set of rules. Right. All of this still applies if you're working at a standard workstation in inverted commas. Yeah. But I think those set of guidelines really need to reach out to the employee to look after themselves and say that you're being offered this flexibility, but you've got to take some self-responsibility for where you're working and how you're working, and then to the employer say, give them the tools to be able to do that.
Right.
And the tools to be able to do that is a laptop solution with a separate keyboard, with a separate mouse. And then you take it then to the home environment, because out of sight, out of mind is something that undoubtedly is still in existence within the corporates now. They accept that people can work hybridly, and we're probably at a situation now where we're 60-40, 3 days from home, 2 days in the office. And they know that for 2 days, they're working safely because they're working to the SE guidelines.
Yeah.
What does it look like at home? Because all our homes are different.
Yeah.
If you've just come out of university and live in central London, you probably live in a studio flat. You're not
Table.
even if you've got a kitchen table.
Yes.
You might be perched on the edge of your bed, but it's that out of sight, out of mind scenario of, are they working safely? And the employee can be as culpable there as the next person, because they might not want to shout about it, because if they shout about it, they might get told they need to come in the office 5 days a week, and that's not what they want.
No, true.
So just some sort of guidance to say to the employer, you need to make sure that they're safe, whatever environment they're working in. And there can be simple, quick fixes that can turn your kitchen table into a reasonably set up ergonomic workspace for the times that you're working in that environment.
Yeah, that's the challenge. It's, and I mean, thought about it that way, that you've got at least 3 different geographic areas of an office, home, coffee shop, wherever, that you need potentially to be able to work safely and comfortably in throughout. So yeah, it's tricky to think of, like a 5 practical, easy tips as a starting point, that, if you were going to provide a welcome to this new way of working, these are the 5 practical things that you need to do to work safely in this environment.
Yeah, and I know that organisations out there have created e-learning packages that give that guidance,
Right.
and allow individuals to assess in each of those environments, which will then create either a risk rating or flag up any potential issues.
Right.
And that obviously educates the employee at the same time as they're doing it. But in a way, it creates a more reactive environment.
Right.
Okay, well, we've found out what the issue is. Well, how can you create less issues by making better decisions at the start? And if that's a static office, people will say, well, we're going to buy this chair because it's better than that chair, and that potentially creates less issues.
Yeah.
When it comes to hybrid working, because those locations that people work in can be so varied, you need something that is adaptable to each one of those areas.
Yeah.
And let's be brutally honest, the 95% of those people who are working from a laptop.
Yeah.
Well,
totally.
how do we make that laptop safe to use for prolonged periods?
Yeah.
As I say, laptop solutions, very easy. Some form of way of raising the screen, separate keyboard, separate mouse. But then Hotbox takes that to the next level of making that portable, still being able to take everything with you, and setting up in whatever environment you're working in.
Yeah. Do you think there's a fear from the organisation of the cost of some of this? Because if certainly a while ago, some of the kind of more specific ergonomic elements were a lot more expensive than just a standard equivalent. Or do you think that's kind of the playing field's a bit more level now?
People who design and manufacture products for as long as I can remember, if you attach the word ergonomic to it, you can add, not add a zero, but you can certainly charge a premium, and that still exists.
Yeah.
And the interest, I was having a conversation yesterday, the interesting thing is that you look at the project market, and actually the cost of standard or project furniture has probably moved a little bit more in line with inflation.
Yes.
But 25 years ago, a high-end ergonomic chair might have cost you £500.
Yeah.
You're not getting change out of £1,500 now.
No.
So it's not moved in line with inflation.
No.
It shifted in that way. Yes, corporates will be scared of spending money.
Yeah.
But it's a drop in the ocean compared with a lawsuit where you haven't done anything.
It's the risk ratio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Put it into prevention rather than
Yeah.
cure has got to be a better way of doing it.
Exactly. And again, we want people to be proactive, and it's not to create less business from us on a reactive viewpoint, but it's our mission, it's our goal that people are able to work safely in whatever environment they're in. We'll still be there to help those that have the musculoskeletal issues and difficulties that they'll encounter for whatever reason it might be. But the starting point needs to be safe. And implementing product within that doesn't necessarily have to be an extortionate amount of money.
No.
I mean, a laptop, anything between, realistically, for a business grade laptop, you're talking £750 to £1,250.
Yeah.
Well, to bolt on some way of raising that laptop, a compact keyboard and a separate mouse,
There's peanuts.
is a very small percentage of the cost of the laptop.
Yeah.
But you then times it by 1,000 employees, and they start looking at numbers sort of in that way.
So what, looking to the future then, what role do you think ergonomic education or wellness initiatives can play, or companies like Think Posture, how can you adapt and how can you get involved earlier in the
Earlier in the piece.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but a change in DSE regs or those guidelines that we're getting given would create a massive shift in the market, because corporates would all of a sudden potentially be sort of scrabbling around looking for support of, well, okay, I need somebody to write this new hybrid working policy for me. But we sort of know that's probably not going to happen. For me, the future is keep sort of banging the drum that we are banging, using not only Think Posture from a corporate perspective, but also from the posture store's perspective of getting individuals to think about their posture away from work, taking that education piece back into the workplace and talking to their colleagues, talking to the health and safety manager, the line manager, to sort of say, look, we care about our posture, we care about the way we're living and our health and our wellness. Can you help me do that while I'm at work? Wellbeing programs are very varied. I mean, some people do it really well, and it covers off an awful lot. But wellbeing programs sort of will go from putting fruit bowls at the end of a desk to incorporating gym membership and encouraging people to be more active, and offer health insurance and the whole sort of health piece with it. What we need is a shift closer to the health end of the market,
Right.
Rather than just paying it lip service by giving somebody a banana at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Strap a puppy, that's the other one.
Yeah, so you'll bring your dog to work. Well, I'm all for that, to be fair.
Yes.
But I think that's where ergonomics can sit, and people like Think Posture and companies like Think Posture, and that includes our sort of competitors, should be looking to sort of be part of a bigger well-being program rather than sort of just this reaction.
Sounds like there's a great opportunity here for you, Mark, to write a fantastic book about how to set up the perfect hybrid workplace now. Take the bull by the horns and get out there and write that.
I'll need an editor-in-chief.
Okay, we can find that for you.